at the time, Brian, when I started this journey, like that before picture, I had just gotten my body fat done. It was slightly over 30% body fat. I was completely inflamed. I hadn't only noticed because my hands were breaking out in rashes, almost like hives around my joints. My joints were super achy. It felt like I was 60 years old. And you can get from 30% to 15% just by being health conscious, like still eating your granolas and your things. But when I went to like 15% and I wanted to continue, there were some other compromises that led me to more information and more compromises, meaning.
This week, I interviewed the founder of Dad Sculptors, Dane Palarino. After hitting rock bottom in his 40s, he transformed his health, losing over 30% body fat. Now he dedicates his life to helping men over 35 overcome aging challenges, balance family and work, and achieve peak physical condition. We discussed how Dane reclaimed his health and confidence, why high achievers can't ignore their well being, breaking through mental barriers to achieve ultimate fitness, how to balance family and fitness, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. Really enjoyed my interview with Dane. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Gryn, and I have Dane Palarino on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, love the title of your business, dadbodsculptors.com.
Thank you.
And I know we were talking a little bit off air, but when did you start this business, and what sort of urged you to get into this, health and wellness for dads?
Yeah, so I officially launched Dad Bod Sculptors July of 2023. So about a year and a half ago. And what inspired me to get into it was my own story, my own pain, my own agony that I was living in every single day. I'm a dad of two young boys at the time. My oldest son was 3. My other son was 6 months old. They're now 9 and 6. So this was back when I was 42. I'm now 46. But I was married. I was successful in scaling a business. It had taken me 10 years to build 2 successful agencies in the technology space. And so I should have been waking up happy and enthused because 10 years of work was finally producing the fruit that I was looking for, but I wasn't. I was waking up just angry and grumpy and with negative talk, self-talk, just looking at the world with a lemon in my mouth, so to speak. And so that was showing up in my marriage, the way that I spoke to my wife and the way that I got aggravated and agitated with my kids. And then, going to work was just kind of going to work and checking the box and doing what I knew how to do from, daily execution. So I had these habits and systems that didn't take a lot of thought. It was just kind of execution of it. But the long and short of it was, Brian, I woke up one day and just realized I wasn't happy and I wasn't getting out of bed with enthusiasm. I was just kind of going through the process. And at 42 years old, I realized, wow, this is going to be a long life if I continue on this path. And the sad part was I was training every day in group theory or Orange Theory fitness classes, and I was fasting, so eating somewhat health conscious for 16 hours a day. And one day I took a picture and I saw what I looked like in a transformation contest, the before picture. And honestly, I did not have any idea that I looked that way. As I like to say, I reflected, my body reflected more like an eggplant than a Greek aesthetic god. So I realized, well, maybe this is where my insecurity is coming from. Maybe this is where a lot of my negative self-talk is coming from. So I went on this journey of personal development. I used training and nutrition to change my mindset and to change my habits, which eventually led to a body that I was proud of. And more importantly, I was proud of the man who was showing up every day in all areas of his life. And so by doing that, I'd helped hundreds of men along the way. I'd realized like, hey, this might be my next mission in life. And so I started my third business, which was Dad Bod Sculptors.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And so you transformed. I see your before and after picture on your Instagram page, and it looks like you had like a decent base to start from. Obviously, not what you wanted it to look like, but what type of changes did you make to go from where you were and how you sort of got into shape as you are now?
I just paid attention to the details and I picked one style for both training and for nutrition. At the time, like the last 5 years, how I'd gotten that body was I was always training. Like I went through a period of like body weights, calisthenics, group training, P90X, at home workouts, sometimes the gym, sometimes not the gym, just lots of different things to say, hey, I checked the box today. And then in terms of eating, like I was eating somewhat health conscious, yogurts and granolas and bars and protein shakes. But then I also would enjoy the hamburger and the fries and things like that. But I thought it was in moderation. But slowly, as I realized my metabolism changed and what I was able to do in my 20s was no longer effective for me in my 30s and 40s. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go to identifying some information that I can actually use to change my body composition because I did have some muscle foundation from all the years of doing something. Like I wasn't dormant for all those years. That's where a lot of my anger and frustration came from because I'm like, dude, I'm doing the work. Why do I look like this? And I figured if I'm going to put in the time, I want to at least look the part. And looking the part meant I was going to be a more confident individual who's going to believe in himself more, and the people around me would believe in me more. So it trickled down. And so I just went on this really kind of this process of self-development where every night, because my other business was successful, my wife was kind of putting the kids to bed every night. She had this nighttime routine for 2 to 3 hours. So I just started getting into information and really figuring out like what's the optimal way to train for a man over 35. Like what was happening in my body that wasn't happening in his 20s. And I realized I was decreasing in muscle mass. My metabolism was slowing down. I didn't have as time and energy to commit to these programs that I once did it in my younger life. Running wasn't necessarily strategic. Like I used to just run to get weight off. So all this information just made me like, okay, I'm going to pick one style. And for me, it was hypertrophy style training with progressive overload. And the reason I picked that is because I had tried so many other programs. And I knew at 42, like, if I'm going to do this again, I'm going to pick one thing that I can really go deep in that I won't be bored with in 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. And I realized progressive overload was what bodybuilders were using for decades. And it was just some compound movements that you can keep going deeper and progressing in. So I like that. There was always going to be this challenge for me inside that style of training. And oh, by the way, it also allowed you to sculpt your body, right? So if I wanted to change my body composition, I knew I needed to put on muscle mass. So that was going to give me the greatest chance to do that. And then as I got into that style of training, it led me to the style of eating, which is macro-based eating, which I realized at the time I had done fasting, I had done keto, I had done paleo, I had done bulletproof. I was drinking, butter in my coffee all morning and then eating shit at night and just tried all these different things and they just weren't working for me. They were good protocols to use at times, but for a daily busy guy, it wasn't sustainable for me. And so I went into the information around macro-based eating and lean proteins, optimal carbs and healthy fats. And then just kind of picked a few of those and started tracking my things I ate. Like I used MyFitnessPal for 3 years, almost every single meal, tracking everything, every detail to figure out what was going to work for me and what wasn't, how my body responded. And essentially what I looked for there was like three things. One, how well does it digest? Two, is my body absorbing these nutrients? So I'm getting the fuel that I need to sustain myself throughout my busy day. And then four, was it eliminating properly, right? Was I getting bloated? Was I being gassy? Like those are things that were going to impact how I felt and showed up the next day. So when I dialed in the macro-based eating and found my optimal sources of energy with the training, things just started really happening for me pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, those are all good points. I think, especially as we age, I mean, I'm 44. Um, like I always say, a priority should be building muscle or at least maintaining what you have to the
Yeah.
best of your ability and hypertrophy training. And when you talk about hypertrophy training, just so people understand, are you talking more like obviously that's building muscle, but like more around rep ranges and you sort of, made those adjustments as far as like staying within a range?
Yeah, I tried to stay within 10 to 12 and I tried to within that 10 to 12 initially, I would kind of gauge the weight that I was using to say, okay, I should be starting to feel it around 6 where the next 4 I've really got to work for. And then at that 10 mark, I could probably get another 2, but I'd need a spotter. Then I
Yeah.
knew, okay, that's a good weight. And then I progressed from there,
Yeah.
2.5 pounds to
It's a,
5 pounds.
it's a good point. I mean, I for a while I did not go to the gym, but now I'm sort of back in the gym and I run fall to this myself sometimes is like most people are not training to failure or
Yeah,
even coming close to that, right?
that's right.
Now I think they're saying like to failure, you don't even need to train to failure. You could probably get to about, like you said, 2 to 3, even maybe 4 reps close to failure
Yeah.
on your sets. And that's sort of a good sweet spot to be at.
Yeah. And then I learned other techniques, like as I got into time under tension, like, okay, I only had 25-pound dumbbells to start. So I could probably get to 10 to 12 really easy, but what happens if I had a tempo, one, two, three, hold two, really focused on, okay, when you stretch the muscle is when the muscle grows. So you started learning these different techniques within that style of training that even if you went to a hotel and they only had 25-pound dumbbells, like you could still have a really effective workout by using time under tension, half reps, quarter reps, really
Yeah.
going higher volume. And, so there were different techniques that I started to deploy that were really making sure that regardless of the weight, because my whole premise was avoid injury at all costs. Because I
Right.
was at this place where I knew if this attempt failed, it was the only excuse I needed to never go at this thing again. Right. It was like, and so I tried CrossFit a couple times because I like the camaraderie. I like the energy of going in a room with other men because I was doing this thing alone. But I went in there and it was like I saw a couple of these moves and the kipping and the barbell snatches, and I'm like, yeah, this is like literally one move away from being sidelined for a very long time
Yeah.
and with an injury. And I'm already cranky being healthy. I was like, that's all I need is being a sling for 6 months. My family's going to be suffering with my miserable attitude. So I went into bodybuilding with I can control this process. I can control the weight, right? I can mitigate my risk and I can progress. And so that was kind of like yeah, let's just stick to this.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, like you said, CrossFit obviously has become popular in the sense that there's this community around it, which I think is great. I think I always tell people if you go work out with someone or find someone to hold you accountable, that's really important. But
Yeah, for sure.
avoiding injuries even more, right?
Especially
Yeah.
as you age, man. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're just one excuse away from just throwing in the carts.
No doubt about it. That's why I stopped playing basketball a while back.
Yeah,
Right.
same. You don't find me on a court anymore. I love playing basketball, but I'll shoot a hoop and I won't be going 5-on-5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that. And then the macro based eating. I mean, nowadays there's 80 million ways to eat and people and is there a right or wrong? I mean, maybe to some degree. I think a lot of like the paleos and even now you're seeing, obviously like you see carnivores. I think that the one thing that they have in common is the fact that they're eating whole foods and they're avoiding like just ultra processed foods. Um,
100%.
but I
And
do know,
I love all those. I believe that those work. But for me, running a business, right? Because I was running a headhunting firm and I just wanted to find something that worked with my busy schedule that allowed me to be a decent human being when I was around my family and to be present. And so the third component was, okay, if I'm going to put this time and effort into it, the hour that I have a day, I want to look the part, right? And that was a big piece for me. And I noticed when I ate carbohydrates, the people that looked the part ate carbs. Like there was a guy named Steve Cook who was a major influencer, and watched a lot of his videos because he had a physique that I had idolized. I was like, he had the muscle, like it was clear this dude works out, right? Like he puts the time into the gym. And when I looked at a lot of the paleo and carnivore people, I realized that they could be slim and lean and cut and have some lines, but they didn't have that muscle fullness. Like I wanted to be a strong man for my boys, right? I wanted them to kind of superhero dad. And so for me, I didn't feel that the paleo or the keto or pulling out carbs did that. Although it was whole foods and digestion was on point, absorption was there, right? Elimination was there. It didn't give me the muscle fullness and roundness to build the muscle that I wanted, and that was a piece for me. And then two, I noticed that when I ate that style, I craved a lot more at night because my body was deficient in
mhm,
some nutrients. So when
yeah,
I set up this macro-based meal plan, every 4 hours I was going to have a meal. It was like these micro goals that I had, and every meal had carbs, proteins, and fats. So I didn't have any ups and downs in my energy. I was stable throughout the day, which really helped stabilize my mood for some reason. I had noticed there were parts of the day where I was starting to become really cranky and agitated, and that's when I would go for a sugary thing or a beer or a vice, just to kind of curb that. And when I started to have these micro goals of balanced meals every 4 hours for me, because I worked from home, so I can have those 4 or 5 meals. I was more stable. I looked forward to it. I felt a sense of accomplishment every time I nailed a meal. And then slowly like waking up and seeing that scale change every day and taking those pictures, it was like, yeah, it's working. And when guys start to realize that their effort is producing fruit, we put so much more energy and interest behind it, right? We slowly we become more and more interested in the information and the why. And when you get that competency, you get that confidence. And those two things are really dangerous for a man to have because then he becomes unstoppable in to some degree.
yeah. I mean, I agree. I think I've been through a lot similar things. that you've talked about. Like I did fasting for a while. I've cut out macronutrients, but like I think a balanced approach is a great way to go about it. Carbohydrates do play a role, and you're seeing that with a lot of other health influencers in the space who have gone and added in fruit and honey for many different reasons. Could be hormonal health, thyroid activity,
Yeah.
and I've definitely added in. Like I notice you talk a lot about rice. I mean, white rice was the old school approach back, with bodybuilders, but there was a reason they were doing it: easy to digest, easy on
Yes.
the system, and just a quality carbohydrate where you don't have to deal with, like low toxic, like lectins and things like that that could interfere with digestion and things like
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps the inflammation at bay. And at
Right.
the time, Brian, when I started this journey, like that before picture, I had just gotten my body fat done. It was slightly over 30% body fat. I was completely inflamed. I hadn't only noticed because my hands were breaking out in rashes, almost like hives around my joints. My joints were super achy. It felt like I was 60 years old. I wasn't sleeping very well. My digestion was completely wrecked. I was taking antacid pills every day, and those stopped working. I was taking shots of baking soda 3 times a day. Like everything was just havoc in my system. And then I saw the picture and I was like, something's got to change. Like what I'm doing clearly is not working. And so I slowly started to pull things out. And you can get from 30% to 15% just by being health conscious, like still eating your granolas and your things. But when I went to like 15% and I wanted to continue, there were some other compromises that led me to more information and more compromises, meaning a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more elimination of certain things like dairy and cheese and gluten. I started to kind of seed oils, and then you pull that out, bam, now you're at 10 to 12%. You're like, didn't change much, just pulled a few things out, and now I'm less bloated, right? I've got less brain fog. And so you can still keep those things in your diet. It just depends on your goals. But I try when guys come in, I try to get them on this process of my program. Like we're going to pull out the gluten, we're going to pull out the dairy, we're going to pull out the seed oils, and we're going to keep it all whole food, single ingredient items. We're going to identify optimal proteins, carbs, and fats that work for you, but also foods that you like. And then once we find that sweet spot, we're just going to accelerate. And then they find foods that they love, that they're enjoying, plus they're getting the results they want. So they stay more committed to that process.
Yeah, I love that. And um, so your process fairly similar to mine. Nutrition, fitness, accountability. Is there anything around like stress management? Because obviously stress itself could wreak havoc no matter what you're doing,
Yeah.
and if
Yeah.
you're not sleeping well as well.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's a big thing. I always tell guys, listen, I can put together Chris Bumstead's nutrition plan. I can give you his training plan. I can give you his cardio, his supplementation plan. But if you can't control your cortisol level, we're good as done. Like nothing's going to change for you. So we've got to be able to manage that piece of it. And so all of us, I'm an athlete with Whoop, and Whoop, my guys all get a Whoop when they come on board. And it's really great because we've got our own team inside there. We keep each other competitive to the daily strain, and we have some banter in there, which is fun, but it also allows me to see that data. How hard are they pushing? How well is their body recovering? What type of sleep are they getting? And of that sleep, is it quality sleep? Can we get the recovery we need to push the body? And then, every day, every week, we look at those pictures. Like, how is the body responding based on the compliance that we've got in place? And so I give them morning protocols to start their immunity and digestion in the morning. And then I give them all an evening protocol to help them unwind so that their body and mind shuts down sooner from the world and really starts focusing on, okay, I'm a priority first thing in the morning again. And so those things allow these guys to really get high quality sleep. We recover properly, we push hard, and then we manage every single week based on that data to calibrate. So it's really this personal touch, which I love because it's essentially who I needed in my journey the most is what I've created, and I'm the offering to my students for that.
Yeah, I mean, morning and night protocols or rituals or routines. I'm a big fan of what does that look like just for you and that you try to implement with your clients as far as evening rituals and then morning.
Yeah, so it does start the night before. Like when I decided I was going to be an early riser, because at the time when one of the habits that I noticed was I was drinking alcohol and eating sugar at night. So I realized that's setting up for a very poor day the next morning. This is why I'm sleeping later. This is why I'm waking up groggy. This is why I'm cloudy. This is why I'm agitated. So I started to pull those things out. And then when I pulled those things out, I also had to make sure that I was unwinding properly. So the protocols that I give my guys is we pick a detox tea, like an herbal tea, that they're going to have an hour after their last meal. Kind of sets the pace that, okay, I'm taking care of me, some self-care. We're going to put some magnesium, some zinc, some vitamin D, some K12 in there, right? Post that meal. And that lets them know, okay, I've got a tea I need to make that's going to be waiting for me in an hour. I've got some vitamins there. So it's this kind of reprogram of the mind, like I'm taking care of self. And then we shut down all vices. We shut down the TV, we shut down the phone, and slowly but surely that body unwinds and goes to bed earlier. And then what happens is a byproduct of that is they're going to wake up earlier. And when you wake up earlier, now you're up before everyone else. You've got, again, what? Some time for self-care, some time to not play life from your heels, but on your toes. So what do we do in that time? Well, we're going to take care of self again. We're going to make sure that we're setting up our digestion properly. So I give them a morning protocol drink. And that morning protocol drink is going to help them with lowering the pH in their body so that we're set up, right? Reducing inflammation. 2, it's going to help with digestion. 3, it's going to help with immunity. And 4, it's going to help with gut health. And 5 is going to help with hydration. So we do that first thing in the morning. Again, what's happening, we're rewiring that brain. Like, hey, I'm taking care of myself. Usually we're, a week before the program, they're drinking 4 or 5 or a bottle of wine at night and waking up groggy. None of these protocols are in place, but now they're consciously setting themselves up the night before. And so then that leads into, okay, now our next marker is kind of that first meal. So I set up these little markers every day to where I teach them the body you're in right now didn't happen overnight, right? We're not going to fix it in a week. We're not going to fix it in 30 days, but we are going to have the mindset that you need today. And that comes from our daily habits. We can control the controllable. And as long as I give you the habits of your future self, you'll eventually get there in the physical form.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, are you working with one-on-one or is this more in groups
It's
atmosphere?
both.
Both.
It's all one-on-one, but we all come together as a group once a week.
Oh,
So yeah, everybody's one-on-one, so everybody gets personalization across training, nutrition, supplementation, and cardio. And then they have access to me on a daily basis for their own personal needs. And then every single Friday, all my guys check in. So we have that weekly calibration. But every single Friday afternoon, we all do a group call, which is really the best call of the week. It's like you don't realize how many men are alone, and we do this thing life a lot harder sometimes than we need to. And even when we go on this journey to get healthier, like there's kind of 3 blocks of support that they get or don't get. Like either there's the wife that's like, honey, you need to do this, whatever you need to do, I'm going to make sure you're set up for success because I want you to have this, right? Maybe it's they're a little bit more concerned about that individual's health or their attitude. Then there's the wife that's kind of like, you've told me you're going to do things like this like a million times. Like this is another one of these things that you're going to spend time on. It's going to be by the wayside in a month. So they don't really believe that the man is going to execute. So it's like, why are you really doing all this? Right. And then there's the one who has a spouse who's not really where she wants to be in life. So she's going to sabotage this whole process. She's going to challenge the supplement. She's going to challenge the food. She's going to challenge the routine. She's going to get agitated that he's not there to eat the meals or go on the drink, have the drink or go out to eat multiple times a week. And she's going to make it a little bit more difficult for that individual. And so my job is to make sure that they stay the course because although it may look selfish, it is the most selfless thing you can do. Putting yourself in a better position to support the ones that you love requires some level of selfishness originally. Like I always say, the most important vitamin you're going to take right now is vitamin N, which is vitamin no. You've got to become okay with saying no right now. It's not forever, but it's right now. You've got to prioritize this and this new process and system to create that 2.0 version of yourself who they will all benefit from. But there's a process we got to go through.
yeah. No, it's great that you bring that up because, I mean, obviously having a supportive family is a help. It can
Yeah.
make things go a lot smoother, but sometimes that's not always the case.
No.
You know,
I've had wives throw out their husband's supplements.
really.
Like literally throw them all out. Like sit there and eat a bag of chips like in their face, like teasing
Right.
them. It's like, so I've got to make the man aware, like, hey, we're not going to divide here, but we've got to control the controllable and we've got to take responsibility for who you're going to become. You can't let some other outside influence, regardless your spouse, your family, the most important thing and the hardest thing that you should work on every single day is yourself. Over your relationships, your job, your parenting, you need to become your biggest project. When you do that, the world becomes your oyster. And some people don't always see it because you don't look it, but eventually when you look it, they will see it. So you have to see it before they can.
Yeah, and also like you mentioned, like the mindset change, because I think a lot of males run into this obstacle that they've always focused on others, or they focused on their business, like you
Yeah.
mentioned,
Yeah.
making money, and like the priority for their own self care has just gone to the wayside.
That's it.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, that was my issue, man. It was like I had grinded so long in my business to build two businesses. Like the first one took me 7 years to build into a seven-figure agency. And I always like to say, God gave me enough rope not to hang myself, right? Where you just keep, you're failing forward, you fail, but it looks like this, right? Like every day is up and down, but over the time it's like this. And one day the second one took me less than 3 years. So I was able to learn from that, parlay it, and get to seven figures. But the trade-off was when I got there, that nighttime, I had this reward system, which was I earned this. I earned this piece of cake. I earned this fried chicken. I earned this beer. I earned a little bit of weed here and there, right? Because I worked so hard and I set up the wrong reward system because that was all I knew from society, right? Hey, you earned this. And this was like by poisoning myself, this is the reward, right? Like by putting a neurotoxin in with sugar and alcohol and setting myself up for failure the next day. This is the reward that I worked all those years for. It was just backwards, right? And I think a lot of people still have that reward system because you grind somewhere else and providing and protecting and planning and vacations and homes and cars and student loans and this tuition and all these things that when you finally get that nighttime moment, you sabotage yourself. You literally sabotage yourself. And so I teach men that we're gonna rewire your brain to realize that self-care is the most important care that you can have. And like one of the things, Brian, like I have so many men that they do this 90-day because they've got something coming up, like a vacation or something. They want to feel better on that vacation. And they will all send me pictures when they get there. Like, this is the first time I've been excited to check out the gym at the hotel place. Usually it's margarita time, and now it's gym time at 6 a.m. Like they all, because they've rewired their brain, they now are addicted to the process, taking care of themselves and getting that endorphins and serotonin release that it's like they realize that the poison is no longer serve them at one point in their life, but it doesn't serve them anymore.
Yeah, great point. I mean, like getting to the point where uh it just becomes a part of your life. It's like going to the bathroom, you know.
That's
And
right.
but it can take time to get to that get
Yeah,
to that point. I mean, because like you said, you didn't get there overnight to where you are, and that was decades of whatever it was of stress, self sabotage, and overeating, or eating the wrong foods. And so to change those habits and to get to the point where it just becomes second nature, that takes time.
yeah, 100%. And that's one of the things. Some guys, when they come in the first 30 days, like, oh, I know it's going to happen, but when? And I
Right.
always say that's the wrong mindset. Here's why. You're looking to validate yourself based on a result, right? And you're asking, when's it going to happen? But in the same breath, you're asking, can I have a cheat meal every week? Well, which one do you want? Do you want the cheat meal of comfort or do you want the new body, right? Because you can't have both, right? If you want it to come faster, then you have to stay the course. So by validating yourself on a result, which means I'll be happy when I lose 20 pounds, right? Then you're completely unhappy throughout the whole process of losing the 20 pounds. And as soon as you lose the 20 pounds, what happens? That same system that tried to sabotage you enjoying the process sabotages the result because now it says, oh, I deserve to go out for a burger and a beer. Now I lost 20 pounds. And within 2 weeks, you've gained back 15 of the 20 pounds because you set up the wrong reward system. But a man who validates himself on his daily habits, the master plan just needs to get mastered and enjoys that process to where every day he creates happiness. He's not waiting for happiness. That man cannot be stopped because when it's good, he's the same man. When it's bad, he's the same man. He still shows up every single day, regardless of the storms that are going around or the celebration and victories that are happening. And he still shows up because he relies and validates himself on a daily execution of his habits. So that man can't be stopped. So there's always a turning point. Some guys, it takes about 30 days. Some guys really pick it up sooner. Some guys, really, the first 90 days, you just kind of keep teaching them how to rewire that brain. But once it sets in, those guys become unstoppable. They literally become unstoppable because they've adapted it as there isn't an end point here. This is a new lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? And every day I get the chance to get up and create that happiness. So what ends up happening is they go from dreading getting up and going and putting on their pants and running their daily process to, I can't wait to get up tomorrow. Because every day I get to do it over again. And each milestone throughout the day helps lift me up and feel and believe that I'm a bigger, stronger, better man. And then
Yeah.
all those other people start recognizing you. Like one of the things when you start changing physically, what happens? Hey, Brian, are you okay? What are you doing? What are you eating? Why are you eating? Most of them will always ask, hey, are you sick? Because you start getting healthy, they start asking you if you're sick.
Yeah. Right.
Right. But that starts to make them feel like people are recognizing me. And when people recognize you, they're curious. And when they're curious, you have the ability to influence them with the information that you are now empowered with. And there's nothing more impactful. If we're gonna move this thing one man at a time, it only comes from the ripple effect. And the ripple effect only happens by you doing your part and getting out of your own way. When you get out of your own way, you now allow another man to be curious about your lifestyle. And when he's curious about your lifestyle, you now have the ability to influence him with the right information of what's worked for you. And that will plant a seed that he can't unplant. And he will now be curious about, maybe I could do that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great point. I'm also curious. I like to ask this question. What's one thing you've changed your mind on in the past, let's say 10 years?
Oh, so many things. Yeah, like I used to have this like the that you needed an escape, that you deserved an escape. And I really went hard on creating a life that I never needed to escape. So I no longer drink alcohol. I no longer smoke weed. I no longer engage in pornography. Like all these vices that were just so detrimental to my mental, that I realized like those are self-sabotaging behaviors. I'm going to create a life that I'm so proud of that I never need an escape from. And so
Mhm.
everything that I do is based on that premise of, right, is this something that serves me, right? My best self, and something I'm proud of. And so, like my wife and I always have this thing of transparency. Like, we tell each other everything, and I'm proud to live a life that way. Like,
Yeah.
where there is nothing hidden, like nothing worse than like, like guys that like I have guys that are, maybe later in a marriage and they're texting inappropriately with a woman. It's like, do you know what stress comes from? Like having to worry about where your phone is all the time. And God forbid somebody gets access to your phone, or engaging in pornography. Like, did I leave a window open? Did I clear the cookies? Like all the mental shit that you got to go through, to hide those things. When you put that stuff aside and you just become a man that you're proud of, it really just becomes such a peaceful way of living. So that was one of the biggest things, was getting rid of those vices and really just creating a life that I was proud of.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, you see that stuff in other relationships and it's sad. It's like, um, yeah,
Yeah. I would have friends send me things at the beginning of my relationship, like when I started, and I was just like, I would stress out, like, did I delete the picture? And I'm like, I just finally said, like, hey, don't send those things to me. I don't want them anywhere in my vortex. Like, I don't, if I opened my wife's phone one day and there were pictures of some half naked dude, like that would just crush me. Like, so I'm not interested in getting those things, and just really setting boundaries with people that were my friends, because I knew my habits were changing, and the way that I wanted my relationship outcome to be was going to be different than their relationship outcome. So it started by being very protective on what I let into my world. And then once I had my world protected, it started with not sabotaging it, and going and finding those things on my own.
yeah. And then also too, I think it's important, and this is sort of piggybacking off what you just said, was like creating an environment that is going to be supportive and also like putting yourself around other people who are like-minded and
Yeah.
trying like I like what you do where you do individual coaching but you also come together as a group because I think it really is powerful when not only you're doing it with a coach but then you also have other individuals that are all sort of working towards the same goals.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that a lot of guys get. It's like everybody comes to the thing for a different reason, right? Like some like the accountability, some just love the camaraderie. Like come on this call, and we're all in a school community, so we can chat in there. And every week I'll do a highlight of a client success, and the way that the other members support that member. Like one of my guys wrote to me this morning. He said, "Thank you for highlighting me last week. Like it really raised my vibration the entire week, knowing that all these other men had lifted me up." And sometimes guys come on and they're just like, "Man, I had a really tough week. Like I didn't execute the way I needed to execute. I had alcohol when I didn't want to have alcohol, right? That led to me not doing my training the next day." And other guys were like, "Hey, guys that are 6 months in the program, 12, hey, we've been there. It's about having grace. Pick yourself up. Next week we got this call again, right? Be in a better position mentally, and you'll feel better." And it's like, thank you. They need that, because if they give that to somebody in their circle, they're gonna be like, "Dude, don't worry about it. It's just a beer." Right? Because their standards are so much lower than the standards that these men are trying to set in their life. So if you look at my website, you'll see there's two things that we do, which is one of them is we help you create your 2.0 version. And we do that by teaching you how to raise the standard in your own life. And you need to be the standard for everybody in your circle. And when you do that, you're going to be the one that everybody comes to when they need somebody the most. And that's just the man that I want it to be. I want it to be the person that if somebody was in jail and they had one phone call at 4 o'clock, they knew who was answering that phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Um, yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, leading by example too. You talk about having kids and things like that. I was just talking to someone about that. Is like, you want your kids to sort of live to a certain standard. Well, the best way to do that is sort of to be it yourself,
Yeah.
right? To be at
Yeah,
that
dude.
standard. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I've always been a man of standards, right? I just happen to lose the standards in my health and my wellness. But I was like a hard grinder of business. Everything I did, 100%. But this was an area where, because I did it 100% in my business, that I then found the off switch with food and with alcohol.
Hmm.
And so that impacted when I started to have kids, and one was 3 and 6. And I started to say, when these kids get older, he's 6 and he's 3, like I'm going to have standards for them. I'm going to want them to push themselves. I'm going to want them to embrace being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Right. And I was like, well, shit. I mean, if they look at me, they're going to be like, well, what's going on here? You don't look like you're pushing yourself. And so I kept scaling it out. Like I look like this when my son's 3 at 30% body fat. Like in 3 years, if I continue this journey, I'm what, 35, 40% body fat. Now things get harder for me to do. It gets harder for me to cut this weight off. I become less motivated. I got less energy. Like, what kind of man am I going to be able to be for them setting the standard? So that was a big catalyst when I saw that future version of myself. And I was like, no, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. Like, my wife's going to pretend she's attracted to me in this body. Like, this isn't what I promised. This isn't the superhero dad that I envisioned I wanted to be. And I can't ask my kids to go be exceptional in things that they want just because I'm the man of the house and I make the money. Like, I need to set the standard both in, physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally, and in my relationship. And so I just decided, like, it wasn't this or that. Like, it was a big thing of like, what's this or that? It's like, no, it's this and that, right? Like, you can have both. And when I did, man, all this time that I felt like I didn't have, slowly, you wouldn't be amazed on how much more productive I was in my business once I got this area of my life dialed in, which gave me enough time to start another business, which was this business, which gave me enough time to figure out what Instagram was. Like, when I started my business, I was only on LinkedIn, and I started Dad Bod Sculptors. I figured, well, this has to be an Instagram business. I didn't even know how to spell Instagram. I didn't know what a post, a reel, or a story was. Like, I had no idea what I'm like. I'm supposed to now I didn't take selfies of myself in like 3 or 4 years. I'm like, now I got to take pictures of myself to like show people that I know what I'm doing or that I know what I did and share my story. It was like totally uncomfortable. But because I went through this process of validating myself in my health and fitness on my daily execution habits, I just applied that to another area of business and said, I'm not going to focus on the followers or the likes or the quality. I'm just going to do the habits. And these are the habits that influencers are doing to put out good content. And now I'm going to figure out what that is for me. And again, over time, I grew that account. And so now that was another testament of just taking a system that works, and you can start to now apply it and find other ways. So I tell guys, like, you earn a job right now, but once you get to this, get out of your own way and create this next best version of yourself, you will be amazed at what other things get attracted to you. New bid. So many guys on my team have sold the biggest deal they've ever sold in a long shot on this deal. Started a new business that's excelled. Found their dream partner. Got a raise. Like all these things start to happen because you've raised your vibration as a human being and attracted that level of quality of things into your life. When you're feeling shitty about yourself and not optimal, you're only going to attract more things that make you feel more shitty and less optimal.
Yeah. No, all great points. I mean, um, one of the things I was just thinking about was, uh, the daily habits turn into weekly habits, turn into monthly habits, and then by the time you know it, like things will start happening. But if you get so caught up on the results initially, that it can sort of throw you off track. So, like
Yeah,
you
you stop
said,
wanting to do the habits.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I love it. I love that you have this system set up and similar to what I do. So hopefully we can reach as many dads as possible. And what would you say? This is another common question I like to ask. If you were going to give one tip to someone who's just starting out, maybe they wanted to, similar like to yourself, wanted to get their body back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago. What one tip would you give them?
I would say pick a program that you want to follow, whether it's if you're at home, pick a 15-minute body weight workout, right? And set yourself up the night before to wake up earlier than everyone else in your house. So whatever time you're waking up now, go back an hour and say, tomorrow I'm going to wake up an hour earlier and I'm going to make sure that I drink 16 ounces of water to start my day and then have a little bit of caffeine and do this body workout for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Just show up for yourself for 15, 20 minutes. And you'll find out because you're doing that over a week or 2 weeks, like you said, you're going to now start going, well, if I'm getting up, maybe I should start watching what I'm eating. And if I'm watching what I'm eating, maybe I should stop putting some things in that are making it detrimental to me going to bed on time, right? And you're going to start to string
It's
these
like a
habits together.
snowball
It's,
effect. Yeah.
yeah. You'd be amazed, man. Like when you start just showing up for yourself for some reason, because we're guys it's very common for men, I realize, like you're providing, you're protecting, you're being selfless to do everything for everyone else. But when you make that time for yourself, you become such a happier person because you're like finally able to look yourself in the mirror and say, like, I'm doing what I said I wanted to do, but I've never done it. And, so there's like one guy, his name's Chris. He's on my program. He's got a beautiful family, a wife. He, works 2 jobs. Okay. He puts his kids through competitive sports, which are very expensive, that he never gets to go and enjoy and see because he has to work 2 jobs to pay for them. Okay.
Right.
And his wife's a stay-at-home mom, and he's working from 6 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, like a full-time job. And then he goes and runs a golf course where he's walking and cleaning up the golf course from like 6 to 9 o'clock. And he just felt shitty. Energy was there. And he's like, there's no room for me to find money for myself. Like, and we just found a way for it to work for him. Okay. And he has lost almost 40 pounds
Wow.
in 100 days. He's become a completely different person, has energy throughout the roof, and still found a way to put his kids through competitive things, but found a way now that he can see those events. And it's like, you have to stop telling yourself the story that you've been telling yourself that's keeping you where you are.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Well, Dane, this was great. I feel like we could talk for hours.
For sure, man. You got a great question.
Well, Dad Bod Sculptors, best place for people to find you?
Yeah, it's going to be dadbodsculptors.com. If you want, you can go on there. I wrote a free ebook which talks about these 5 daily habits. A really great place for it's very simple but super effective to get yourself started. It'll help you give you some direction on how to get started on your own journey. And on there, if you have the urge, you'll see we've done over 100 transformations for guys, all ages, all sizes, mainly men over 35, all the way up to 70 years old. You'll see their stories. And if you're inspired, there's a link on there where you can book a call with me. And on that call, I always like to kind of talk to people about, hey, where are you? Where do you want to be? What's your schedule look like? What are some of those obstacles? And if we can, we try to design a blueprint that works for them.
Excellent. Well, we'll definitely put links in the show notes. And yeah, I love what you're doing, Dane. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing all this knowledge and, just helping affect as many men as possible. So thanks so much.
Yeah, man. Brian, thank you so much for having me. Number one. And number two, you keep fighting the good fight too, man. I love the work that you're doing. So let's keep changing lives.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangryn.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again and have a great day.